What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, and I think it's about time that we at the very least, addressed this one right here. Yeah, we got to talk about this one for at least one video. Everybody's talking about it right now. Hawks Nest did a stream about it a couple days ago. I watched some of that. It's all over the Discord. It's all over Seahawks Twitter. So we got to at least address it once, right? Yeah, we're talking about Chris Jones here. Chris Jones, the all pro Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle, who's coming off a career year, by the way, where he actually finished not only as a first team all pro, but a defensive player of the year finalist. He's not reporting to the Chiefs training camp. He's not reporting to Chiefs training camp, and he wants a new contract. The two sides remain far apart on a new deal for the Defensive Player of the Year finalist, per Adam Schefter. So, it seems like the Chiefs have run into another stumbling block to their dynasty. Stumbling block number one was Tyreek Hill. They ended up having to trade Tyreek Hill over what amounted to, I think it ended up being like a couple $1,000,000 a year. But when a player feels like he's worth something, they're going to fight pretty hard to make sure they get that something. So that's how it goes. Stumbling block number two, right here. Well, actually, maybe you could say that stumbling block number two was Orlando Brown Jr. thinking he was worth Trent Williams' money and the Chiefs having to part ways with him earlier this offseason. So maybe this is stumbling block number three. It depends on how you feel about Orlando Brown, who wasn't really an elite player, but he was a good tackle and is better than what the Chiefs are going to be trotting out this year. But this is a big one. This is maybe the biggest one. Chris Jones is, as of right now, probably the best interior defensive lineman in the league. And without him, that Chiefs defense, which is already not exactly a brick wall, really becomes leaky, and it becomes really, really hard to imagine that team pulling off 3 or 4 straight playoff wins. Because that's what it's about, right? The Chiefs get to the postseason pretty much a guarantee because they are so good offensively, but then they've got to beat either 3 or 4 good teams in a row to actually win the Super Bowl. And Chris Jones is by far the best player on that defense. They do have other good players, but they need Chris Jones to be able to take over a game here and there. They need Chris Jones to be a super duper star for at least a portion of that playoff session so they can actually get all the way through and let their offense finish it off. So, with that being said, knowing that the two sides are far apart, knowing that the Chiefs have already had to let go of two valuable players over the last year plus, call it, I don't know, 16 months because of finances, and knowing that they've already made big investments into guys like Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes, although that investment is actually not as big as it should be, but even with Pat Mahomes giving that team a break, we can see that their problems arise. They just cannot quite get up to where they need to get to in order to keep some of their other super duper stars. So Chris Jones could become another casualty of that. Now he's still under contract. I think his cap hit this year is 21 million, and it makes sense why he wants more. In fact, I've read things that indicate he wants somewhere around 30 million a year, which, hey, I can't say anything about it. He deserves 30 million a year. Bosa, we all know Bosa is going to get paid in the very near future here. He's probably going to get about 30 million a year. Chris Jones is every bit as valuable, every bit as good, every bit as important as Bosa. So I can't say anything negative about that. But here's the real question. All this being said, should the Seahawks be in the market for a Chris Jones trade? Because we're talking about a trade here. We're not talking about a signing. We're not talking about waiting for the Chiefs to cut him. None of that's going to happen. We're talking about a trade. We are talking about trading for a guy coming off one of the best years by any defensive lineman in recent memory, an Aaron Donald level year. Chris Jones was 28 years old last year, so he's basically in the prime of his career at his physical peak. He just turned 29 earlier this month. And you can see he made first team All Pro for the first time in his career last year. 15 and a half sacks in 17 games. He was dominant. He finished third in Defensive Player of the Year. He made the Pro Bowl. He was a beast in the playoffs, most notably against the Bengals. And they needed him because that offense was not working at 100% in the postseason. In fact, Mahomes, playing injured, didn't play that great in either of the first two Chiefs playoff games. They played okay. And they needed Chris Jones, and he delivered. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Now he wants to get paid like the best defensive lineman in the league, which, yeah, he pretty much is. He deserves to get paid as much as the elite edge guys because his impact is just as big, if not more so, than the elite edges. Getting a lot of pass rush from an interior defensive lineman is actually much more valuable than just the edge. With all that being said, saying all those things about him, let's talk about a few different angles on trading for Chris Jones, because that's what everybody wants to think about right now. So, first, talk about the trade package. You're probably looking at something like the equivalent of 2 first-round picks. Maybe you could put something together that's like first-round pick plus second-round pick plus Darrell Taylor plus like a 5th-round pick or something like that. He is 29 now. He is 29 now, and I think most people realize you're in your physical peak from like 27 to 29. So you are talking about getting a guy after he probably just had the best year he's ever going to have. But while I think most people understand how that works, that doesn't necessarily mean the team that is trading him is going to be respectful to that. No, they're going to trade him, and they're going to be asking for value commensurate with the season he just had, not the season that he is going to have next year and the year after and the year after. So it might be more than 2 firsts, but I would guess that the baseline for a Chris Jones trade starts at the Seahawks' first-round pick next year, first-round pick the year after, and then you kind of dance around a little bit from there. Maybe you add like a 3rd-round pick, maybe you get back like a 4th-round pick, but it's somewhere around there. It's doable. If the powers that be feel like this team is close to where a Chris Jones makes them the Super Bowl favorite, or at least the NFC favorite, then it probably adds up to do it. Again, the reason why the Jamal Adams trade blew up in our face was because we made that trade and then we weren't that good a year plus later. So we ended up trading away a top 10 pick. If you get Chris Jones, then you're going to be in a position to not have to worry about that. You're going to be picking low. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense from that perspective. Now, the money. Let's talk about the money side of it. Way I see it, if you go over to Spotrac, you take a look at the Seahawks' current financial situation as of a few days ago. So you have to remember we're saving about 4 to 5 million from Nwosu's cap hit. We're saving about 6.2 from the Diggs cap hit. And you factor in everything that needs to be factored in, because some people are kind of forgetting about some stuff here. We do have to pay our practice squad. It's going to cost anywhere from 3 to 4 million to put together a practice squad. You are going to have to pay a little bit of money to some of the players that you release. Like some of the players we've already released had a little bit of a signing bonus, but it's doable. When I say doable, it means you trade for Chris Jones and then you extend him, and you extend him monstrously. You give him that 30 million a year, and then you're just all the way in. There's no way out at that point. You're trying to win a Super Bowl this year and the year after, and then party's over, basically. But if you extend him, that first year cap hit, you can have him on 30 mil a year, but that first year cap hit could be like 10 million. It could be 11 million or 12 million. Somewhere in there, you can make it work. You're probably going to have to do a little bit more dancing under the salary cap. Now, the good news is you can send out a player in the Chris Jones trade. You could send out a Darrell Taylor, and then you're saving a little bit of money on Darrell Taylor. You could send out a. I mean, who else do we have that the Chiefs might want? Probably somebody on our defense is going to be of value to them. Maybe they want somebody like a Mike Jackson who played fairly well last year, is very cheap, and looks fantastic so far in the early stages of training camp. I don't know. Maybe they would value that guy. So you can save a little bit of money that way. You're probably going to have to do something else. You might have to at least partially restructure Jamal Adams. You might have to release somebody who you're currently looking at as being potentially somewhat valuable. Like, I mean, well, value's relative, but maybe you're releasing a Dwayne Eskridge. And I know it's not that much money, but it's a little bit of money. And you're going to have to really pinch your pennies if you want to get to the point where you can afford the Chris Jones extension. So if you extend him, if you backload the contract heavily, and then you're a little bit aggressive with slicing up the roster to make this work, it can happen. So I'm not here to shut the door on any of it. I'm not. This could happen. You're going to have to put yourself in some awkward situations. You're going to have to really kick the can down the road on this stuff. You're going to have to really put yourself in a situation where you might be in 2 years, you might be like the Rams were last year, where the Rams went all in for that Super Bowl and it paid off, but they had to pay the due for it. They had to pay their dues for it, and they were one of the worst teams in the league last year with a pretty inflexible roster. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. Now, do I want to do it? I'm just I wish I had a little more faith in this team being that good, because in order for me to be on board with a Chris Jones trade, I have to believe that adding Chris Jones makes us basically Super Bowl favorites. And I just don't know if I'm there yet. So I'm not against it, but it's tough. Now, because look, on paper, Chris Jones is everything that we need. Chris Jones is everything that we need to make this team all the way around elite. Our offense should be elite this year. This offense should be right around the fourth to sixth best offense in the league. If it's not, something went wrong. This defense, we're good at the edge rusher position. We've got a nice stable of guys to rotate in and out there. We just extended Nwosu, took care of him. We've got probably the best safety group in the league. We got really good cornerbacks. We patched up the middle linebacker spot for the moment, at least, with Wagner. It's just about that defensive line. Our special teams, we have one of the best kickers and one of the best punters in the league. It really is just about that defensive line. So Chris Jones is everything we need in theory. But my problem is we're in a division with another team that is basically all in for this season, the 49ers. And what you can't have is going all in and then not even winning your division and not even being the best team in your division. And with the way the matchups are and with the way the kind of rock, paper, scissors nature of football goes, football being a game of matchups, I'm not convinced that Chris Jones makes us better than the 49ers. So do I want to make a committing trade like this, knowing that the San Francisco 49ers are still at least just as good as us and probably better? That's where I wonder. That's where I'm not so sure if I can get all the way on board with this. So it's one of those things where if it did happen, and by the way, I want to be clear here, I don't believe that this is going to happen. I don't. I think there's too much in the way of it getting done. Although I will say the Chiefs and Chris Jones are supposedly really far apart. I seriously doubt this goes on into the regular season. They're going to either have traded him by then or have ruined their long-term salary outlook to keep him around. It's not like they're going to just let him sit at home for a month or two. I don't think they can do that. So they are going to have to make a decision, and if the Seahawks end up being the only team willing to really dance with him, then they got to dance with him. But it, it's just one of those things where I don't feel like this makes us the best team in the NFC. It makes us closer, of course. It makes us a more complete team. I'm not convinced it would make us better than the Niners, who have probably the best defense in the league. And their offense, really, it might not be as good as our offense is this year, but it's going to be very close. You know, they've got better coaching, better play calling, better system. So to me, If we do it, I'll be excited, but I'm not going to be all the way in the way I would have been on a Chris Jones trade, say, 3 years ago. That's how I feel. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks.